how old, you've been married 9 years?
Yes, I had been.
You had been at the time that you left?
Yes, that was 1970.
You had 3 children at the time?
Yes, they were 7, 5, and 2 years old.
Well, who is she, Medea or Scarlet Woman, or what is, you really upset with that, are you? Why aren't you just as upset at males who do that? You're upset. Not as much.
No, no.
Come on. All right, hold it there.
Right.
Maybe I should have started. All right, how do we begin this, Pat? How old were you when you got married?
19, which is the average age. But I think what might help...
So you're 28 when you split?
Yeah.
Okay, well, tell me what might help, because this is complicated.
Well, the reason that most of these people feel the way they do is that they don't know the real absentee mother. If they are typical, they have what I have broken down into 3 stereotypes of what an absentee mother may be. The first of those stereotypes is the Anna Karenina type. A woman who is either promiscuous, cheats on her husband while she's married, and then decides she wants to go off and run around with a lot of men.
Have a good time.
Yeah. Another misconception is what I call the autumn sonata stereotype, which is based on the notion that these women are cold-hearted career women who care less about their children than they do about finding a career.
Yeah.
And the third stereotype is based, I think, on someone like Margaret Trudeau.
She'd be Anna Karenina, wouldn't she?
No, I think she's seen as a flaky playgirl, superficial sort of person, whereas an Anna Karenina might be someone who is madly in love with one man, and she leaves her family for him.
Okay, hardly flattering profiles you're offering here.
Right, right.
All right, well, who are you any of those?
No.
Okay, who are you? Why did you run away?
Well, I fit into a category that I found that 1/5 of the women in my study fit into, which is we were emotionally incapable of dealing with full-time nurturing based on things that were in our own childhoods and the types of marriages we were in. We found ourselves at one point or another displaying clinical symptoms to the extent that we really had to get out of the situation, or some very destructive things were going to begin to happen.
You were afraid you were going to hurt your kids, did you?
Yeah. My psychiatrist told me if I had stayed, I either would have become a child abuser, have committed suicide, or both. And indeed, there are many stories about women who should have left, haven't left, and have indeed finally committed murder and suicide.
I don't have to tell you that there are people out there who will say that you're using your psychiatrist to excuse your own guilt.
Yes,
and that nobody has a crystal ball to determine what. Okay, but that's okay with you. What are you, emotionally capable of dealing with this eyebrow raise?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
What I would like to point out to people is that in spite of the feeling we all seem to have that we're very progressive and things are changing at a rapid pace, we still don't seem to want to admit that emotional problems are medical problems. They are not a matter of lack of willpower, as my former husband used to think. If, for instance, I had come down with tuberculosis and had to leave my family so
that'd be all right.
because so they wouldn't catch my disease, that would be accepted.
Right, but we don't accept emotional reasons.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, guess who's here? This is a remarkable act of family civility and caring, because they'd rather be talking on television about other matters, but obviously they share their mother's belief that these are issues about which significant numbers of families are dealing, and Joyce is here, the 20-year-old daughter of Pat. Joyce, you're now married, are you?
Yes, I am.
With a baby?
Right.
How do you feel about your mom and what happened?
It's hard to deal with now, knowing what... I can understand better what she went through when we were little and how hard it is to raise 3 kids, because I've only got one, and it's hard.
He, she?
It's a boy.
He's driving you little bananas, isn't he?
11 months old, and he's a pistol.
Yeah. So you understand, you have some sense then of the pressure your mother felt?
Oh, yes.
But you're still not at peace with her decision. Does that characterize your feeling?
Yeah, I would think so.
What? Can you be a little more specific?
I guess I feel she made her decision based on what she thought she had to do, and now I feel that maybe she could have tried harder and it might have worked out, and I wouldn't have gone through what I went through during school.
May I interrupt?
Certainly.
Obviously, she is caught up in the same inability to grasp what emotional illness is. But that's okay. Another thing I would like to point out is that in line with all of the studies that have been done on divorce and children of divorce, it is pointed out that children who live with their fathers as well as children who live with their mothers have the same degree of difficulty in dealing with the trauma of divorce. And
So there's not a greater penalty with the absentee mother?
no, for instance, if indeed we had done the traditional thing and I had kept custody, she still would have suffered because her father was gone. And I know because I'm a product of a divorced family and I suffered the loss of my father.
Right.
Yeah.
Joyce, there are a lot of people who work very hard to, first of all, nobody wants divorce. It's tough, but occasionally it happens, as we know.
Right.
There are people who want somehow for you to share in their belief that it should be equally painful, and somehow the mother takes a bigger hit in the chops from society for doing this than the father does. It's another manifestation of the double standard, boys will be boys. We let men get away with more. Do you find any virtue in that thesis?
No. I've seen other little kids now of friends that have divorced, and I've watched a little girl next door go through a lot of trouble and she's living with her mother, and her dad keeps fighting for custody, and
how do you feel about that? What's your point?
it's really hard on a 7-year-old girl who's in first grade, who's puts on one show for her mother and her stepfather to say, you know, this is the type of girl I am.
I understand that, but don't miss my question now. They're saying that you wouldn't be as upset with your father if your mother had retained custody of you as you are now with your mother because she chose not to.
Is that
Okay.
true?
It is for me because I had wanted to go with my mother when she had asked us who we wanted to live with, and I had said then that I wanted to go with her, and when I became a teenager, I still felt that I wanted to be with her, and I never went. I stayed with my dad, and there's been several occasions where I packed my suitcase and I was ready to leave my dad and my stepmother because they were just so horrible, I thought. And I don't know what it would be if I had gone to her. Maybe I might understand maybe better of what her true feelings are.
Are you trying to say that because I relinquished custody, the primary emotion you have felt all along is that you doubted that I loved you, for instance, or
Right,
something
that you
like
didn't
that?
care about me, that that I don't want you, here you go to your father, you know.
Okay, I'll give you a chance. Just 1 second. How old were you, Joyce, when your mom left?
7.
And David, you were 5, is that right?
Yeah.
I bet you don't remember this.
Not very well. I have one fairly clear memory of just my dad leaving, but other than that...
Of your dad leaving?
Well, my dad went to stay in a hotel for a night or two.
Oh, I mean
while
during the
this was
troubled
going on.
times,
Yeah.
I see. You're 18 now, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. What vision do you bring to this? All
Well-
male, 18-year-old, wise person you? What do you think?
Unlike my sister, I think I've pretty much, gotten over the problems. Even though, according to my mother, there's really nothing to forgive, I think I've forgiven mostly. I understand what she did, and that she really really didn't have any better choice. And that, okay, it happened, and I've had problems because of it. I don't think it's, any worse than if I'd gone with her. But, let bygones be bygones, you know, keep living your life.
So you are considerably less complicated about this than your sister.
Yeah.
Wait till he's a
That's-
dad, though.
Wait till he's a dad?
Yeah.
Tell me what'll happen when he's a dad.
Well, maybe not so much for him, but I have a hard time dealing with what I'm supposed to be as a mother, what I'm supposed to do for this 11-month-old baby who stays at home with me all day, how to cope with when he wakes up in the morning and he's covered from head to toe with a messy diaper and it's just all over and you just,
What she's pointing out is, again, something that comes out in the study. It is true that women who have had mothers that were absentee mothers have a more difficult time being mothers themselves. And indeed, 18% of the women in my study had mothers who were absentee mothers, and that's 18 times higher than what you would expect as an average.
Yeah.
So that's a problem.
We do seem to applaud single fatherhood. In fact, we even make television programs about it. There's something attractive, you know. The old man on Ponderosa or Bonanza never got married, did he? But, you know, you never knew, so you kept tuning in. Fred McMurray, there's all kinds of... we seem to find it romantic, the male with the kids. But we condemn, as this audience is about to do, the mother who left the...
What I would like to do is simply pose to the audience a premise, a logical premise, which if they can deal with, they can prove that I'm wrong. I would like to say, in an era where we are embracing the notion that fathers should have equal custody rights, and that when parents become parents, they have equal responsibility to their children.
Yeah.
How can we then turn around and say that custody options for mothers are not allowable? It isn't logical. It doesn't tie in.
Is the caller there?
Yeah, I'd like to say that I don't care what this lady's reason is for leaving her kids. I don't think there's any justification for it. I'm one of the kids that was left. My mother left when I was 4 years old. My father had a lot of mental problems. He's been in and out of jail. And my mother never even tried getting in touch with me till 15 years later. And I hate her. I hate my mother for doing that. And this lady, she's crazy too. She has no idea what she's doing to her kids.
Do you have a relationship with your mother now?
No, I don't. She has called me. I have 2 babies now. My oldest is 2 years old. From the time she's been born, my mother's been calling me because she wants the life of my granddaughters. And there's just no way.
Yeah, it's irrevocable for you.
She'll never see my grandkids.
Yeah.
Again, if I may impose, something else we found by studying custodial fathers and custodial mothers is the fact that, indeed, absentee mothers tend to see their children less often than fathers without custody.
Absentee mothers do?
Yes, and it ties in with the fact that
They're fearful of the pain of
they have less money, for one thing, and they're usually long distances away because both parents are pursuing their jobs. But the more important thing is, yes, the pain, the guilt is so intense for these women. They're terrified of their children.
My mother had no guilt whatsoever. She lived in Chicago.
Well, but it sounds to me like she tried to reach you at least...
After I was 20 years old, she tried to reach me. I was 8 years old, dying in the hospital.
But wouldn't it make everybody feel... This is awfully simplistic counseling here, but it just seems to me that you might be happier to reconcile, and so might she. And isn't that at the root of the whole human experience, to try and...
Any lady that could leave their kid at 8 years old dying in the hospital...
All right, okay.
Something that you have to understand is, I don't know how old she is, but I know when I went to school, I was singled out as being kind of odd because I lived with my father and divorce was still kind of new and it wasn't too accepted, whereas now you look at the schools and there's a lot more divorce. The kids aren't singled out as much.
Well, I know my grandparents. She had a very happy life.
All right. Okay, we certainly are not going to fix this on a television program. But I think we should make the point that there are these kinds of divisions in families, as if I'm telling you something. And Isn't it a shame, though, that a person would drag those feelings into the grave? What for?
Something else I believe that children may not realize when they're in the position of having their mothers gone living with their fathers, and the mothers don't see them very much. They don't understand, perhaps, how much the father has to do with keeping that mother at a distance. There's very often a lot of hostility and anger coming from the former husband, and he keeps her from...
But do you have any idea how many non-custodial fathers we've had on this program who've made the same accusation about the mothers? I've got a break here. My apology to you for having to give you a fast shuffle here. I don't really have any choice. I'm glad you called, and we're sorry about the interrupted relationship with your mom. It's clear we're talking about mothers who have made the decision to back away from the family, giving the father custody in a voluntary way. You should know that over 1 million children in this country of minor age are in the custody of their fathers. And while the surveys are not...
divorced fathers. That doesn't include widowed.
Right. And only about 25%, I think, according to your numbers, are unwilling, have unwillingly surrendered the children. In other words, there are court orders which say the father gets the kid. Yeah. But if you take 100 kids living with their fathers, minor kids, 75 are there voluntarily. The mother made the choice.
Because their mothers wanted, yes.
How do you feel about all this? We hope you'll join us.
Soon after my first baby, I saw those first signs of age. Tiny lines that tell the world, you're getting older. Thank goodness I discovered oil of Olay. It's similar to my skin's own natural fluids. Not one drop feels greasy. And as my skin drinks it in, tiny dry lines become less apparent, leaving my skin softer and smoother.
I hope she'll be as pretty as you.
Discover the secret of oil of Olay. It can help you look younger, too.
I see you brought cake, too. They're beautiful. How did you get your cake so unbelievably high?
It's new Dream Cake. I used regular cake mix.
Well, so did I.
But to the regular cake mix, I added Dream Whip topping and Jell-O brand pudding and pie filling for a cake that's higher than ordinary cake.
Scrumptiously moist. Lusciously light. I'll have Dream Cake, too.
Me too.
Next time I'll bring flowers. Or new Dream Cake.
Which would you rather serve?
The Akita, a dog of Japanese ancestry, is gaining popularity among breeders and as household pets. Nan and Jim Saylor raised them at the Minky Kennel near Akron, Ohio.
Our Akitas actually chose Dad's meal and chunks over other brands. Dad gives them good bone structure and beautiful coats. The moderate price helps too.
You're pleased with the results?
5 champions in our first litter.
Thank you all for choosing Dad's.
I like the Mexican taste of Buenos. They're crispy, they're tasty, they're fun to eat. Buenos tortilla chips.
Introducing new Buenos tortilla chips, made from real stone ground corn, then golden toasted to a light crispy crunch.
Doesn't Buenos mean good?
Very Buenos.
Thanks, amigo. New Buenos tortilla chips. Buenos means good, from Nabisco.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe that women and men were put here for 2 different reasons, and women are here for the emotional security of their children.
What are men here for?
I think that God made us that way on purpose, and men are here more for the support. They're cooler. Men are able to keep their heads about them more. Women need to give their children emotional security. One thing I'd like to ask is...
My feeling is I can't believe the lack of compassion for somebody that has had some emotional problems.
In this audience?
No, I'm talking about the woman that is the absentee mother. I can't believe that they can't feel compassion that she was having emotional problems, and that is why she did this.
You don't think the audience has compassion?
No, I don't think they do. And I think that she was less selfish because she did not damage her children. There are too many people that do
say because of guilt, don't want to, and then beat the...
They damage their children psychologically or physically.
I disagree with that. I don't think that there's a lack of compassion. I think that the problem here is if the woman has an emotional problem herself, she needs to seek help, but not to sacrifice her children for it.
I want you to meet Margaret. Margaret is 29 years old. She's a Chicago agent representative. I'm not sure what that means. Is it theatrical or...
I represent directors who do commercials. They're in New York.
All right, so you're an agent for a professional group of people. That's a good job, we should say. Well, I mean, we're not showing off here, but you left... Okay, you know what I mean. You're not... you left... you're not in the all-night diner doing chopped liver for the patron. Left 4-year-old daughter with husband. Wanted better life for yourself. How long did you do that, Margaret?
That was 6 years ago.
Yeah. You understand, probably what? Identifying with what we were discussing here with Pat, huh? You were just...
You're speaking to Margaret, aren't you?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm totally same story.
Why did you do it?
Well, I was raised in a very strict Catholic upbringing, and I only was told to get married and have a baby, and I knew nothing about myself at all, so I did that. At 18, I got married and had a baby, and I... just, you know, I knew nothing about myself. I was just going through motions. I gave birth, I did these things, and one day I just got some kind of courage in me and said, I can't do this.
Did your husband, did his eyes glaze over, or what happened when you told him that?
Well, he's a more kid-oriented person. He's a teacher now. He lives in a small town in Wisconsin, and he was the better parent. He had more patience. He was more in control of himself, had a direction.
But he didn't, so he had adjusted to your decision? I assume he wasn't ambushed by this. You didn't just tell him on a Tuesday night when he came home, huh? Did you?
No, she went to visit with him for a few weeks, and then after that worked out, we just sort of, I didn't plan on it before she left, but then...
Oh, I see. So when you first separated and divorced, you had custody of the child?
Yeah.
May I point out that in the study as a whole, 55% of the women initially take custody for an average of 2.5 years.
And then they surrender?
Yes.
Afterward?
Yes.
Florence is a 33-year-old freelance clerical, you do freelance clerical work. You sent your 3.5-year-old son to visit your husband?
Yes.
And you never asked for him back. So you fit this profile that she's talking about.
Well, I wanted to ask for him back. And I found that there was so much pressure from family that I was a terrible person. And
is that
that
the reason
I didn't deserve to have him because I had sent him away. And so I was told that
well, what do you mean?
I
You
didn't
sent
deserve...
him, but did you send him away for visitation or for keeps?
I didn't know at that time. I was having emotional problems and didn't even know enough to ask for professional help. Depended on my peers for advice, and they were not people in my situation, so I wasn't getting the advice that
I understand.
would have been advantageous.
And you are what? Of what ethnic background, if you think?
Jewish.
With conservative, Orthodox, traditionally oriented parents, huh?
Conservative.
Okay, so mother, you better not abandon the kids for sure in your family.
Right.
There is an extraordinarily high representation of Jewish women in my study, 4 times higher than average.
The rabbis will be very pleased that you brought that up. So tell me then, without telling us more than we have a right to know, what kind of pressure did you get? Did your father...
When I called and said, I want to come home, I want to see my child, my father said, if I was his father, my child's father, I would never let you see him again. So it was a shock. They were doing the best that they could do in handling it. But I had been, for years, a devoted mother. For 2.5 years, a devoted mother. I had never, or 3.5 years, I had never abused my child, was a nursing mother, cared about the birthing, and
when I went to work, I worked at a daycare center so he could come with me to work. And I had basically been working my whole adult life. My parents owned their own business, and I would have to work after school, before school. And when the marriage broke up, and I'd had my child for about a year and a half.
Those career wheels started running, is that
Not
right?
career, no. I
But
mean,
working.
my career was being a mother and a wife. That's what
understand.
I was brought up to be.
Okay.
No, it was to experience something other than a responsibility than what I've had my whole life.
So, what's your relationship now with your son?
After many years of working it out, I'm on very good terms with his father right now.
And you see your son?
And I see my son.
How old is he now?
He's 10 years old.
There's still what?
There still are a lot of hassles that I have to go through, such as this Christmas 2 weeks ago. His dad and himself went out west to be with my parents for Christmas, and I wasn't allowed to go. Not that I wasn't allowed to go, it was my parents they couldn't accept the fact of me being there with my child and his dad.
I think it would be helpful to point out that for absentee mothers, the largest problem seems to be coming from their mothers, and for obvious reasons. I mean,
But it sounds like Dad's in this one here.
Yeah, that happens too, but it's more often than not.
Okay. Couldn't your folks, assuming this was not a nasty, don't dare come darken our door kind of thing, all
No,
right.
they said nothing like that.
I'm not sure I'd want to host a divorced daughter and her ex-husband and the kid. You know what I mean?
Just because it's a volatile situation.
Yeah, it's draining. You know, and everybody's role-playing. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, definitely, but it would have been nice for me to go with my child.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the constant feedback of...
Yeah. How are you now in your head? How much guilt is there? If any?
It's always there. The guilt is always there.
Now, we should also, the records must show, they'll be thrilled that I'm telling them all about you here, that you remarried and had you now have a 4-year-old son by that second marriage, which has ended in divorce, and you have joint custody of this second child.
It's not legal, but it is.
In other words, you see this baby.
Yeah, we live in the same town. And so I have to go through the constant separation again.
So how come a nice person like you, raised like this with tradition, etc., and this is not about you, it's about gazillion other people. How did we get to this place? What's your wax philosophical for us here? What do you say to your friends when you get down to this kind of personal?
To tell you the truth, I've had no one to talk to about it. I see a therapist, but I have never spoken to another woman in my situation. And I just spoke to Pat last week for the first time.
Yeah.
So I have not processed that.
Yeah,
you know, I've thought about it, but I haven't really...
She's not unusual in that respect. A large number of absentee mothers, in order to defend themselves against the negative things that they encounter among people, is they use very often secrecy.
They hide it.
Yeah.
You don't go out and announce that you have children that, that you're not raising.
Yeah.
We'll be back in just a moment.
The RCA video disc player. No other video product in history has sold more in its first year. Just look at why. The RCA video disc player lets you see great entertainment on your TV with a remarkable picture, remarkable sound, and now even stereo. So what are you waiting for?
Buy now and get 2 free discs. See Greco's on Cayuga Street in Fulton and West 1st Street in Oswego, and in Eastwood, see Mars Enterprises on James Street.
Welcome to Wegmans Food and Drugs. We're gathering the finest foods for you. Buy breast of chicken tuna, just 38 cents with coupon and $10 purchase. And Seal Test ice cream, only $1.39 a half gallon with coupon and $10 purchase. Come to Wegmans Food and Drugs. Every day, you get our best.
Getting a color TV when you don't have the cash is not always simple. There are contracts, credit checks, complicated rental agreements, creative service guarantees, but it all adds up to the same thing.
Just sign on the dotted line.
Before you sign on the dotted line, you should know this. At TV Factory, you can lease a 19-inch RCA XL100 for just $39.50 a month with no long-term commitment, and the service is free. One standard set, one standard price, one phone call. TV Factory. It's that simple.
The experts are always telling you what's wrong. Now you can tell the experts. It's your turn to talk back Central New York because WIXT wants to know what you think. We'll be traveling around weekdays at noon looking for you. Watch for our Eyewitness Live unit Wednesday at Grimaldi's Restaurant in DeWitt and tell us what you think. Then watch Eyewitness News at 11 and maybe see yourself or your neighbor and find out what others are thinking. Eyewitness Talkback on WIXT. It's your chance to tell the experts because we want to hear what you've got to say.
I just wondered how often you visited your children, all of you. Do you have a schedule, or did you just drop in, or?
Briefly, please, Pat?
Well, it just varies a great deal from mother to mother, based usually on primarily distances.
How about you?
And finances. The first 4 or 5 years, I used to see them once every 6 weeks or so for a weekend, which required a
Okay, how about you, Margaret?
Same thing. I visit her about once every 6 weeks. Summertime, I get a couple of weeks.
Same thing, and with my younger son, half the week.
Yeah.
I'd like to know how hard you tried, or was it just easier to say to heck with it?
You never say to heck with it, or at least I don't.
I have a question. Do you guys question your education? I mean, where was your education? Did you ever learn how to be parents? You know, we teach kids how to do geometry, and we teach them reading and writing, but were you ever taught how to be a mother? And do you question the education that you were given as a child?
Yes, that's a very good point. We seem to think that telling our teenagers that how babies are conceived, how they're born, how to feed them and change their diapers is enough.
Yeah.
And we still do not ask people to question themselves before they have children to the effect of, will I make a good parent? Do I have emotionally what it takes to make a good parent?
Over here.
I have a question for all three of you. When you before you started seeing a psychiatrist, did you go to a minister or a good friend, and did they tell you to go to a psychiatrist?
Yes. I was a very devout Catholic for my entire life, including through my whole marriage. I was constantly talking to parish priests about the problem. They had absolutely no idea of what I was talking about. They said it was just a matter of fortitude. You simply go on no matter what, and suggested that I pray for help. There was no such help forthcoming, and so I found advice from the clergy totally useless.
Anybody else?
I had no problem. I mean, I didn't seek any professional help. I just made my decision and went with it.
Florence?
Same thing.
They talk about the emotional thing and the psychiatric thing, and I think, too, that lots of us go into jobs that we're really not equipped for, and that is we just have to give them up, or else I guess we would lose our mind then,
Well,
but at this time, maybe they hadn't.
So you're sympathetic to what?
Definitely, because I'm a product of a broken home, and my father left, and my mom raised me, and I wasn't trained to be a mother emotionally. I was equipped more to run a house. So I've had a hard time going the other direction and being under my husband's control and wanting to do what he's wanted to. I finally have learned it after 23 years. I'm still working on it. But
Okay, I'm to understand this. So because your mother raised you,
yes,
you did not have the modeling of a marriage, of a pair, a partnership.
of a mother, because my mom had to raise 5 children. So hers was head of the house, going out earning the
So
living.
now it was difficult for you to accept Mr. Take Charge then,
True.
as a husband.
True.
There's lots of people out there